This is Hofstra's Campus Conversations, the official podcast of Hofstra University's leadership team, focusing on issues of importance to Hofstra and higher education. Now welcome today's host, Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, Charlie Riordan.
Hello and welcome to Hofstra Campus Conversations. We're joined by the newly appointed Dean of the School of Education, Dr. Ayana Allen-Handy. Dr. Allen-Handy, thank you for joining us today.
Of course, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here with you today.
May I call you Ayana for the rest of the conversation?
Of course.
Sounds great. Ayana, you've had an exceptionally accomplished career in academia. Can you tell us a little bit about your professional journey?
So my journey started off as a first grade teacher in Houston, Texas, and progressed through being a literacy specialist and then a director of college counseling. Academia kind of came out of nowhere. And so I have had the wonderful opportunity to do a postdoc fellowship, the Urban Education Collaborative at UNC Charlotte, which really gave me a lot of insight into what a life in academia would look like. Was able to move back to my hometown of Philadelphia and become a brand new assistant professor, urban education, in my hometown of Philly, and progress through the academy, associate professor, full professor at Drexel. So it was a pretty straight trajectory. Yeah, really excited about the opportunity to be here and to continue my professional career here at Hofstra.
Right. Well, we're really glad you're here. So you mentioned it is a relatively straight trajectory, perhaps, but you mentioned starting as a classroom teacher. Was there a moment or an opportunity or something that happened that had you thinking beyond that K through 12 classroom and into higher education?
So actually, no. I am one of those people who usually finds contentment in whatever I'm doing and likes to build deep roots where I am. I got into teaching through Teach for America. I had no idea that this would be my path. It was kind of like, okay, teaching is going to maybe be a step on a longer journey. A colleague who was part of my TFA cohort, he's like, hey, they're having a cohort of faculty at Texas A&M or of teachers who may be interested in getting a PhD. Would you be interested in that? And I was like, what would I even do with a PhD?
Right.
And so actually, this is a little bit more personal, but had a bad breakup and was like, you know what, I'm going to go get a PhD. And then the rest is kind of history. So that friend, I always, really send a lot of gratitude to him for, saying to me, hey, I think you should join this cohort. And yeah, the rest is history.
Right. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I think it's a great object lesson for our students, too. Saying yes to opportunities, we really don't know where those opportunities can take us. And so Teach for America was you leaning in and taking that opportunity, and things progressed from there.
Right. And TFA is really one of those non-traditional pathways. So it's really interesting that now I'm the Dean of a School of Education that has a much more traditional pathway of preparing educators. And I think a big part of that is because of my own experience and feeling like, I didn't have as much preparation as I probably, could have. 6 weeks of learning how to be a teacher just was not my experience enough time.
Right. So when you were at Drexel, you built this really interesting Joy Education Lab. I think our listeners would love to hear more about the Joy Lab.
Yes. The Justice-Oriented Youth Education Lab is my heart project. It really was born out of my passion for youth, particularly youth as researchers. So we all know in academia, it's a lot of gatekeeping, right? You have to have certain credentials to have access to certain ways of being or knowledge production. And I knew the capacity that youth have to really be able to answer and interrogate questions that they have about their world. And so along with one of my graduate students and 2 high school students, we kind of founded the Joy Lab. It started off as really a project with some of our local high school students in Philly who were interrogating questions around the sustainability goals from the UN, things that they saw in their urban neighborhoods that they wanted to know more about. And we became part of the Urban Education Collaborative's International Conference on Urban Ed, which they had a student fellows program. And I said, you know what, I want to start a version of this. We took the students to Puerto Rico, where they presented their research. And that was kind of where Joy Lab was born. I wanted to be able to build something that really asked hard questions about a lot of our sociopolitical contexts and the ways that communities are impacted by, just the world itself. But I also wanted to have a space where we could operate and be anchored in joy and collegiality and collaboration. And so that kind of combination of justice and joy is what was born out of that.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So what I love about that structure is how you are doing research in the community, deeply embedded in the community, and the community members are research partners. So it's not a model that some are more familiar with where a researcher enters into a community, brings their research expertise, and works very earnestly to identify and solve problems in the community. But you're really co-creating the entire research process with the community members.
That is spot on. Absolutely. I think it's a research process that is incredibly slow because one of the things that I've learned over time is like we move at the speed of the relationship, not at the speed of a paper getting published,
Right.
not at the speed that academia kind of puts forth. And that requires real reciprocity. When I first started the youth project, which is also YPAR project, Youth Participatory Action Research Project, it started by my mom. My mom was the seed because it was her high school that had been kind of displaced, so to speak. So it was a high school that had a deep meaning to the local West Philadelphia community that had now become a gentrified space that was now high-end apartments that priced everyone out. And so my mom, it was in conversations with her about, man, West Philly High, our school, like we lost memorabilia. And I said, let me go talk to, the Alumni Association. And that was where one of our first projects was born out of them identifying a need to preserve the legacy of their high school. And so now it is a thriving program that still continues. It's intergenerational. So it's youth in the high school working with alumni. And my mom actually works in my lab. So it is a real important special space.
Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing all of that.
Of course.
So the West Philly High example was very compelling, particularly how it impacted your mom, and now your mom is working in your laboratory. Could you talk about other kinds of projects from the Joy Lab?
Sure, absolutely. So we do a lot of STEAM work, particularly looking at ways in which to broaden the pipelines of students into STEAM fields.
So you want to define STEAM for us?
Science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math.
Right.
With arts really being a hallmark of a lot of the work we do. So for instance, we have a Steaming Through Dance project that is sponsored through the Spencer Foundation that really looks at 7 to 13-year-olds really engaging in STEM through dance. And so that looks like them coding. It's also them designing. It's a really wonderful transdisciplinary project. Also are looking at a 40-year-old program with the Academy of Natural Sciences, looking at their Women in Natural Sciences program over 40 years and the long-term impacts of the program, 40 years of that program. So that is funded by the National Science Foundation. We have 2 more years of that project. And so, we're really thinking about ways in which to expand these pipelines to STEAM.
Right. So this program is really available to any sort of discipline, and particularly intern transdisciplinary work.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I really love how much you've done for the local communities in this structure. As you know, one of the core principles of Hofstra is really community engaged work. Service learning, for example. And as part of Hofstra 100, our comprehensive strategic plan, which we launched in the fall of 2024, really designed to prepare Hofstra for the future and take us to our centennial in 2035, we've reaffirmed our commitment to community engagement, community engaged scholarship. So given your experiences, I'd love to hear more about what does community engaged work mean to you? And while I know it's very early and you're just settling in here on our campus, how you're beginning to think about ways in which the School of Education can contribute to this aspect of the strategic plan.
So I will say, knowing that community engagement was a hallmark of the Hofstra 100 was one of the things that really inspired me about the position and the potential impact that the School of Education and then I, as the Dean of the School of Education, could have in that position. I'm of the belief that there's no other way to engage with communities than a very reciprocal way. So particularly at a university like Hofstra, positionality is so important, right? We are a university adjacent community. And so that positionality alone opens up the doors for myriad ways to engage with our community. I think something that we touched on earlier is that lots of people think of community engagement as how do we go and help the community versus the way that I think about things is like what are the assets, the strengths that are already embedded in these communities and how do we come together leveraging their strengths, their, definitely historical legacy, and how do we kind of solve problems together. A School of Education is just a natural community engagement because what we do as a school is really thinking about ways in which we can support teachers and principals and schools that actually, produce the children and the young adults that will be in our community. And so I'm really thinking about ways to continue some of the Joy Lab work around intergenerational research and scholarship, but also just being able to serve our community in that way.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to advance the research, scholarship, creative activity mission of the institution, and also I think a really compelling way to draw students into this kind of work. Right.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I think has been a real highlight of my work is that a lot of our work was externally funded. So I think a lot of times people think about this is like soft work. We're doing community service. But all of the work that we did was, funded by, National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health, AmeriCorps. So we have a real interest in this kind of work. And I think that there's possibilities for this kind of work to be continued throughout my time here.
Anna, as you continue to make your transition to Hofstra on Long Island, what have you learned so far about our communities and the area?
This is like a whirlwind, right? Had no idea I would be leaving my deep roots in Philly and coming here. I've learned that there is no shortage of Targets, bowling alleys, and movie theaters, which is great because I have a 9-year-old son, so exciting things for him to participate in. But I also have really recognized that there's a real complex historical, socio-political context here on Long Island, and particularly as it relates to schools. So I'm really trying to understand those complexities of school districts, neighborhoods, villages, towns, the stratification thereof. It's cold and windy. I've noticed that it is incredibly windy here on the island. So.
The cold and the snow, according to recent history, apparently comes every 10 years with a year that ends with a 6. So 96, 06, 16, 26. So you picked the right year, but if that trend continues, you should be good for another 9 years. Hopefully. Hopefully. Yes. We will see. Thinking about your approach to community engaged work and research and the complexities that you were just describing on Long Island, seems like you're well positioned to lead the School of Education to have impact in these various communities. So I think one of the opportunities, and I'm sure things that you're looking forward to as dean, is the outward-facing aspect of your role and getting to know school districts that exist on Long Island and building those relationships. So have you started to think about how to build those relationships?
I have. It's really the internal building first. So I recognize that, my faculty, staff, wealth of experience and knowledge within the school. I'm really working to first get to know my folks, right? Get to know what those strengths are, what those areas of expertise are, but also leveraging those relationships. And that's not extractive in any way. It's just saying that I'd like to build authentic relationships. So for me to go out and say, I want a meeting with every single school superintendent and all of that, I am more so about the slow build of building those relationships so that they are authentic. I'm completely comfortable with being that external face and that external person because I'm always looking at who do we serve, right? So obviously we serve our students, our student teachers, our master students. Teaching is one of those fields where your impact is residual, right? It goes beyond just, I had an interaction. It could be lifelong. If I'm a teacher in a classroom, then there is a snowball effect of what my impact can be. And so I really want to think about relationships that are authentic with schools, but also really have serving our communities, the most underrepresented, the most historically marginalized communities. That's the work that I've committed to, and I hope to continue here.
I appreciate that very much. Ayana, thank you for taking the time to discuss all the great work you've done and your plans for the School of Education here at Hofstra. We're really excited and thrilled that we've been able to recruit someone with your talents, passion, and leadership acumen here to Hofstra. Congratulations on the new position, and I continue to look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Charlie. It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for listening. If you'd like more information on Hofstra 100, you can go to hofstra.edu/100.
If you have questions, comments, or topic ideas for Hofstra's Campus Conversations, please email podcast@hofstra.edu. Hofstra University has produced and provides this podcast for general information only. It is created in collaboration with WRHU Studios.